Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Monday, October 28th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Coming up, a long march to Sacramento is underway right now by members of the Punjabi Sikh community.
There is this connection to what Mexican farm workers did that the Punjabi Sikhs see today that they must do the same.
Hear more as KVPR goes inside the march in just a few minutes. But first, today's headlines. Congressman John Duarte and his challenger Adam Gray faced off on Friday for a debate. As KVPR's Rachel Livenall reports, the candidates vying to represent District 13 in Congress elicited different reactions from the crowd.
Cheers and hollers were heard on both sides of the state theater in Modesto for the evening debate. While Duarte, the Republican incumbent, seemed to take a friendly approach to questions, Gray, a Democrat, was quick to point out his pitfalls in Congress. 57-year-old Madera resident Cici Gallegos wasn't a fan of the bashing.
I'm not real happy with Adam Gray attacking Congressman Duarte. I think he should just be answering the questions on his facts.
Halfway through the night, abortion took center stage. Gray accused Duarte of not being truthful about being pro-choice. Priya Lakareddy, a Merced area school board member, took note of that.
I really want somebody who can protect women's rights.
Both candidates veered mostly to the center on issues throughout the debate. For KVPR News, I'm Rachel Livenall.
The United Farm Workers secured a legal victory last week in its dispute with the Wonderful Company. An appellate court ruled the nation's largest farm worker union may continue union negotiations with Wonderful Nurseries. They're the world's largest grapevine nursery located in Wasco. The court did not weigh in on accusations of misconduct that both groups have lobbed at each other. It'll be up to the state's Agricultural Labor Relations Board to make a determination on those claims. A church known for its anti-abortion and anti-LGBTQ demonstrations is in the Valley today. This afternoon, the Westboro Baptist Church is protesting outside Roosevelt High School in South Fresno. It also plans to protest outside Reedley High School on Thursday morning. The church is protesting clubs at the schools that support LGBTQ students. The visits are expected to draw a counter-protest, where local advocates plan to set up a, quote, wall of love in support of students. Environmental groups are pushing to convert tens of thousands of acres of Sierra National Forest land into a national monument. The so-called Range of Light would connect Yosemite National Park to Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. The national monument designation would increase protections for the land, but it's happening over the objections of some residents who live in mountain communities. They argue that the land should remain available for hunting, fishing, grazing, and other uses.
It's Cartober here at KVPR. This month we're raising awareness about vehicle donations and how they benefit nonprofits like this one. Help support the public radio programs you rely on when you donate your used car, truck, RV, or boat. Schedule your free pickup today and we'll tow away that old vehicle and give you a receipt for your taxes. Visit kvpr.org/cars to get started.
And now to our main story. Activists in California's Punjabi Sikh community are marching more than 300 miles to the state's capital. They're crossing small towns and large cities and stopping at Sikh temples along the way. The route largely mirrors historic farm worker marches in the labor movement. But as KVPR's Cresencio Rodriguez-Delgado reports, Sikhs have their own reasons for marching. He recently joined activists as the march passed through Fresno.
Just after sunrise, dozens of people are gathering at this home just west of Fresno. It's a chilly Saturday morning, so nearly everyone is warming up with a cup of hot Indian tea.
Just one day, 2 sips.
Okay. Almost all who are here are members of the Sikh faith. Sikhs are a religious minority originating from India's Punjab region. In California's Central Valley, their temples, known as gurdwaras, stand out in this vast inland stretch. The Sikh community's roots here date back at least 100 years by some estimates. Some came on their own volition, seeking opportunity, but others are here for much more somber reasons.
and even their own lives were in danger. And that was reason for many folks to come as political asylees.
Naindeep Singh is the executive director of the civic group, the Jakara Movement. He's talking about the 1984 anti-Sikh riots in India. 40 years ago this month, India's Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her 2 Sikh bodyguards. The assassination followed a series of violent clashes between the Indian government and Sikh separatists. In the days that followed the assassination, thousands of Sikhs in India were killed in mob violence. They say there's never been justice for the mass killings. These feelings are on the minds of everyone who is gathered here today. After breakfast, they file onto a long rural road heading north. This is the 11th day of a historic march to call for the recognition of the events of 1984. On this 350-mile-long walk to the state capital, Fresno is their halfway point. Here, Singh tells me Sikhs feel that they are still a target of the Indian government even today. Have you been threatened, or have you felt like you've been threatened or targeted?
So I had a series of events that came up in the last year for me.
The Sacramento Bee reported the former Fresno police chief was asked by supporters of the Indian government to monitor Singh. Singh was being painted as a terrorist or having criminal links. Fresno police denied the request, but this happened just a year ago. The same year, a Sikh activist was shot dead outside a temple in Canada. Earlier this month, the Canadian government expelled 6 Indian diplomats after an investigation found the assassination had ties to the Indian government. Singh says there's a term for what he thinks is happening: transnational repression.
Neither state nor federal law recognizes transnational repression, despite its increasingly common use by foreign governments.
Assemblymember Jasmeet Bains is California's only Sikh legislator. She drafted legislation to combat transnational repression, but it's currently stuck in committee hearings.
And then we have hydration packets. We also have fruits and snacks back there.
This march seeks to keep this issue in the spotlight. Young people like Gurpartab Gruwal say the march is a way to make their voice heard.
Yeah, this is my generation's duty to continue this forward. And I feel like this is a part of our history. This is our footprint in history.
Farm workers have taken the same path not once, but twice before. It's where Larry Itliong, Cesar Chavez, and Dolores Huerta ushered in the farm worker movement.
6 striking great victors from Delano began a 300-mile pilgrimage northward through the valley of...
Jaskeet Kaur of Fresno is inspired by that.
I think like that really was a lesson for us, an inspiration to take, to be like, this is something that we can do.
Rajinder Singh Jahan has walked every single mile since Bakersfield. He's doing this because he is a survivor of the 1984 killings. He says a Hindu family took him in to keep him safe. He was just a teenager. You were so young when this happened. Were you afraid? Did you know why that was happening? Yes, he says. He knew the Prime Minister had been killed. He knew he could be next as a result. Jahan learned about the so-called March for Justice on the radio. He started training for the long miles as soon as he signed up. He said he's doing this to honor others who weren't lucky like him to be alive today. Are you tired? No, he says. In fact, something or someone is pushing him to go even faster. For KVPR News, I'm Cresencio Rodriguez-Delgado.
And KVPR's news director, Cresencio Rodriguez-Delgado, joins me now to talk more about his walk with these Sikh activists. Hey, Cres.
Hey, Liz. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being here. So first, just tell us a little bit more about why these activists chose this approach, this march to the state capitol in Sacramento.
Yeah, so this is the very first time that Sikh activists are going this distance. I mean, 350 miles from Bakersfield to Sacramento. It's such a large distance in the Central Valley. It has been done before, and what I learned was essentially Sikhs wanted to recreate and draw from the 1966 march by the UFW, by Mexican farm workers. And just 2 years ago, the UFW marched the same distance again. And so the Sikh activists told me that essentially they're drawing inspiration from that because they saw how powerful it looked for UFW and farm workers to march from the valley all the way to Sacramento. And they thought a way to call attention to the issues that they're facing today is to do the same thing. And, the other big thing is also that Punjabi, Sikhs, and Mexicans have a history. They have a history together, living together, but also they're both have roots in farm working. And there's history of the communities merging, mixed families that are Punjabi and Mexican. And so there is this connection to what Mexican farm workers did that the Punjabi Sikhs see today, that they must do the same to essentially continue this, spotlighting the issues that they're facing and that they say are intertwined, because they say no issue is being faced by a single community. And so this is really the reason why this march is happening, is that it happened before and they wanted to make a statement that they too can do this.
In your feature, you mentioned legislation that Bakersfield State Assembly member Jasmeet Bains had introduced. Can you tell us more about that legislation, what it hoped to accomplish, and has it failed?
Yeah, exactly. And Dr. Jasmeet Bains is the legislator, as you just mentioned, who introduced this bill, Assembly Bill 3027. And the bill hasn't failed. It just hasn't gone anywhere. It's still sitting in committees. It's getting a lot of debate. What essentially the bill will do is train police officers in California to be able to identify and also combat repression by foreign governments. And so that's a big task for police officers. But, that is the challenge right now, in that if there is repression happening, it's not easily being able to be identified and also combated, because police officers don't exactly know what to do in those situations. And so there are a lot of questions about whether it's going to move forward as drafted, because it does include mention of other countries. And, some countries, the U.S. has adversarial relationships with them. Others, they do business with them. And so it may have these repercussions, but also it has opened these rifts within the Indian community about whether it casts too wide of a net on the Indian government, and as far as what the bill says, who is causing the violence within this community.
Anything else you'd like to share, Cres?
Yeah, well, to me, this was just a very, I joined the march. I walked 9 miles with Sikh activists. And to me, I was there to report, but I also kind of got a window into the reasons why these community residents are marching. And there were ages, all over the place. There were young kids, there were older adults. And, what I heard even from young people is that they may not know the full history or have the firsthand experience of what many Sikhs have experienced in their history, but they're still seeing what's happening today. And as I mentioned in my story, a lot of them want to continue activism so that Sikhs can get recognition in the state. And, one of the things also is that a lot of them have grown up in areas like West Fresno that the Sikh community is very well versed in. And a lot of them feel that this march is going to just leave a huge footprint in the state's history and in the Sikh history. And potentially there are many more marches in the future.
KVPR's news director, Cresencio Rodriguez-Delgado. Thanks for joining me, Cres.
Ben, thank you.
The march started on October 9th and will end this Friday with a stop at the state capitol building. And just last Friday, Republican U.S. Congressman David Valadao officially introduced a bill to commemorate the 1984 anti-Sikh riots as genocide. The bill is co-sponsored by other Valley representatives, including Republicans Vince Fong and John Duarte and Democrat Jim Costa. And that does it for today. Thanks for listening. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.